Hey, nice Atypical Daydream t-shirt.
Thanks. It's my favorite podcast.
Mine too. But where can I get a t-shirt?
It's easy. The link is in the show notes.
That is easy. I'm gonna go get one right now.
That's a great idea.
Thanks. Bye.
You bet. Stay cool.
I thought, well, that'll be cool. I'll go to this weird convention with all these libertarians in Las Vegas, and then I'll go to Portland, Oregon, and presumably hang out with sort of weird hippies or something. I didn't actually know much about Portland at the time. I hadn't seen like Portlandia or anything. I didn't know what that was.
Hello, my atypical daydreamers. Welcome to the podcast. Here we share road stories. I think everybody's got one, and I want to hear them all. So this episode is pretty exciting. Episode 50. I made it this far. I started recording friends of mine and during the pandemic, just their stories, their road stories, tour stories. And I didn't even know exactly what I was making. Eventually in 2022, I released my first episodes. And then it's just been this crazy journey ever since then. As I've gone deeper into this process, the spectrum of stories has just grown way beyond anything I could have ever imagined. I want to keep making this show. I want to take it, I'll go all the way to episode 500 if I can. And everybody who's been listening, whether it's from the very beginning, all the way up to people who just discovered the podcast, I want to say thanks. And for my dedicated Patreon supporters, huge thank you. Now on to the show. My guest is Inglis. He's a songwriter and musician from Perth, Australia. Today, Louis takes us on a trip he took to the US back in 2012. What I love about his story is that in some ways, not a lot happens. There's no dramatic twist, no danger, no big loss or redemption arc. It's kind of just normal. But Louis has a way of telling a story that I find engaging, playful, funny. It's not about what happens so much as how he sees it. And that is where the magic is.
This is the story of my journey to America from Perth. Perth is often cited as one of the most isolated cities in the world. It is a, fully featured, fairly large city. That's normal sort of city. Anyway, this was the first international trip, probably pretty much the only trip I've taken on my own. Kind of a big deal, I guess, for me for that case. It was precipitated by, I used to release some music on this very small independent label. It was just run by this guy who I'll call Sean, which is confusing because there is another Sean in this story. So he was at the time living in Portland, Oregon, and was putting on a small music festival with some of the bands from his tiny label. So he sort of emailed saying about this and whatever. At first, I didn't seem like I could justify the expense. But it happened around the same time and things are going to get a little bit internet-brained now. I was somewhat interested in the late 2000s in that whole sort of online atheist movement. I was did pay attention to that scene. And then later on, this Skeptics movement. Around the same time, about a week and a half before this festival was to take place, there was this big annual Skeptics meeting. It's called TAM, the Amazing Meeting. There's this guy called James Randi who's been this debunker of, things on television. He would go on television and debunk things as these skeptics like to do. I'm kind of interested in this stuff. I've already figured out at this point that most of them are weird libertarians, but it did seem like an interesting thing to go to. I thought, well, that'll be cool. I'll go to this weird convention with all these libertarians in Las Vegas, and then I'll go to Portland, Oregon, and presumably hang out with sort of weird hippies or something. I didn't actually know much about Portland at the time. I hadn't seen Portlandia or anything. I didn't know what that was. So Packed up my guitar and my backpack, and I had my visa, which I had applied for. It took about 3 months to get the visa to go to the US. Had to say that I wasn't working, even though I kind of sort of was, kind of. You know, debatable maybe, a little bit scary to lie. Got on the plane, went over. It's like 11 or 12-hour flight, I think. It's very uncomfortable. I was like sitting down, you know, I'm quite tall. I'm like 6, not to brag, 6'2". And so I'm always very uncomfortable in planes anyway. But got off, they take you aside into the little room and they sort of ask you what you're doing here and like what's going on. And he was nice enough, I think. I didn't, but it was a little bit intimidating. I stuck with my lie. I didn't crack under the pressure and tell him I was playing a tiny music festival. These are the observations that everyone makes, but like got my first view of an American toilet. The toilets with lots of water and the stalls with like very high gaps underneath that you could sort of crawl under if you needed to. I don't know what I was expecting. For the record, never been interested in my life in visiting Las Vegas. I've seen it in movies and stuff, obviously. I wasn't quite prepared for how cheap it all looked. Like I knew it had a penchant for being tacky, but I didn't realize it was so just like plonked in the middle of the desert. And it felt like very cardboardy and like propped up. I don't know. You see it in movies too much. You feel like it's going to have more gravitas. So I got there, went to this place. They give you a T-shirt for part of the admission price. I didn't realize that 2XL in America was like the size of a parachute. So I got a parachute-sized T-shirt. But it was fun. It was just like, you know, they'd have like talks during the day. It's like a big convention room. And they'd like just, some of it was like interesting science stuff. Some was a bit more like, you know, here's why Bigfoot isn't real or whatever, which is, I was pretty sure of that anyway. But like, you would see all these, you know, it's kind of fun. It's always fun when you go somewhere and it's like, you see, all these like people that I've seen on the computer and are walking around. That's kind of fun. I think Lawrence Krauss was one of the speakers. He's a scientist, physicist guy who had ties to Jeffrey Epstein. That's the kind of interesting, it does feel a little bit like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas a little bit. The sort of weird lizard-like creatures that are like were going around. But there were a lot of nice people at this thing too. Biggest hotel I've ever seen. Not one. It's not on the strip. It was one of these. It was kind of a lower rent place, but enormous. I don't think I've ever seen a building that big. I don't think I've ever seen that an inside of a building that is that big. Went forever. Smell the smell of stale cigarette smoke, because I think it wasn't even that long ago that smoking indoors was banned in Australia. But it was interesting going to a place that had that smell. I actually don't mind that smell of like really stale cigarette smoke. It's not actually that bad of a smell, really. It's acrid, but in a sort of interesting way.
Hey, it's Josh. Hope you're enjoying the podcast. And if so, are you wanting more road stories? Well, good news. I've got you covered. Consider becoming a patron. You'll have access to loads of great bonus stories that there just wasn't time for. And you'll be supporting a truly independent podcast. Find the link in the show notes. And thanks. Now back to the show.
So now we're getting to Portland. Looks really nice from the sky. I put on Elliott Smith on my, did I have on my phone, I guess? No. Might have still had an iPod. You know, I hadn't quite become a fan yet, to be honest. I was still trying to get into it. I am a fan of Elliott Smith now. But put that on anyway while the plane was landing because I felt that was appropriate. I felt like it was a really good vibe right away. I did sort of just, like one of the great fun things, I think, when you're traveling around and just like skipping off the surface of places a little bit, but it's really, I'm sure other people have had this experience. You get off somewhere and you just sort of like immediately sense, it's probably, a shallow sense in a way, but like you get a real sense of like the vibe of the place, like automatically. And probably how like it is when, if you meet a person, you can kind of tell if they're the basic things about them that maybe even they aren't totally aware of, just because it's just comes through. And it's like pretty relaxed, progressive, all that good stuff. This was like it's 2012. So this is like the peak of like this sort of hipster thing. This is like there are hipsters everywhere, which is like, I'm going with the flow anyway. I'm sort of like, I'm happy enough with everything. But there's sort of, it is that vibe too. But I am struck by, I like the leafiness of it. I like the moderate weather. It gets very hot here. I like the sort of things to be a little bit milder. I feel like I'm just talking about the weather now. So I've never met this Sean from the record label before, only like emailed and stuff. There is a second Sean in the story who I'll also call Sean, who we're still in bands. Like this whole trip was kind of a bit of a catalyst for us hanging out a bit more and starting to form some bands. I had met him before. He's from Perth as well, only sort of briefly here and there. Sean, the label guy, had his tiny label. It's called Metal Postcard. And I think it's really just Sean, label guy's personal taste. But it's quite eclectic. So I don't know if there's, it doesn't necessarily, I think, have a sound or anything, which is maybe an impediment. I think he's, sunk quite fair bit of money into this enterprise. And, it's not clear that he's really going to make any of that back. And he's also like trying to organize 1,000 things at once. So you can sort of see that that's what's going on. So I'm sort of just like having these brief interactions with him and then just going off to sort of walk around, check out this city. Yeah, and Sean has like rented like a caravan. It's like it's like a caravan just on someone's property, and he's rented it for me and other Sean from Perth. And we're to stay in there. And there's a house as well. And, they've got the kombucha going, and there's like, big kombucha tank with a massive SCOBY in there. And there's this festival happening in a day or two that we don't really understand really exactly what it is. So it was quite an ambitious festival. It was like a 3-day thing. The ticket price was actually relatively high, perhaps just in order to recoup a little bit. It wasn't necessarily something that someone who had a casual interest in what was going on would fork out for, resulting in like the fact that there wasn't really maybe very many people there at all. And so there was this festival going on with first night. I think there was an art show. There was some fashion thing. A lot of people doing sort of a catwalkish sort of thing. I think they were wearing like a lot of dresses or something made out of twigs or something like that. I think they had exposed breasts and twigs. I played on this first night, not too many people there, which was good because I didn't play very well. Like my whole performance was a bit not really gelling. I think I was trying to do too many things and it was all a bit fragmented. And that was fine. I was viewing this whole trip was very much just, I had no expectations of like anything going any particular way. I just thought it would be an interesting adventure. So yeah, it was a little bit like that. I played again, like I think in the daytime the next day. That was nice. I think a few people were listening and stuff. By the way, I'm not, like I've said, I don't actually mind. I think it was an interesting experience to go through. It sort of felt a little bit like it was still being set up for the whole time that it was running. You know, it felt a little bit like the preparation stage into the whole way through, in a way. And probably because it was sort of being a little bit organized on the fly, and it had these, you know, it's probably, maybe it just got a little bit bigger than it could ever really be, or than it should have been, from the perspective of sort of, having it successful as that sort of event. But, you know, and I think everyone involved had a good time, but money may have been lost. I did get to know a person from my own city a little bit better, such that we went on to be involved in the formation of several bands, which then sort of pulled in more people and became a whole thing, good and bad in some ways, but interesting, and sort of set the course for at least the next 5 or 10 years of what I was doing. This is not an observation about anything else, but like, got back to Australia and the birds here are insane. And I didn't even know that they were that insane. Like constant squawking. It was like you're in a zoo just walking around, and I didn't even realize that was going on all the time. And the people sound the same. And I don't know if the accent comes from birds, because like the birds are going and all the people are kind of as well. So I don't know if there's a relationship there. Talk like this to get over the sound of the birds.
I want to thank Louis for sharing his experience. Be sure to check out his latest album, Tasty Delights. It's like a beautiful lo-fi art folk dream. All the links in the show notes. This podcast is created and produced by me, Josh Caldwell. Music by Visual Aid, my side music project. General support and copywriting by Miranda Caldwell. And if you know someone who you think might enjoy this show, send them this episode. The support really helps. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come back next time.